The subcommittee will come to order. Thank you all for joining us. This is the subcommittee mark, which has been produced in a bipartisan manner and is inclusive of many of the members' priorities. The mark includes provisions that will continue to improve the lives of military service members and their families by standardizing new mother deployment policies at 12 months, bolstering the department's spousal employment promotion programs, increasing reimbursement amounts for state licensures and certifications to $1,000, and increasing access to quality and affordable child care. Our service members and their families make sacrifices for our nation, and we must continue our commitment to take care of military families because together they serve. The mark also continues the committee's efforts to provide support for victims of sexual assault by authorizing expedited transfers to another military academy for cadet and midshipman survivors, as well as requires regulations for implementation of a safe-to-report policy at military service academies, which allows sexual assault victims to report sexual assault without fear of discipline for minor collateral misconduct. The mark expands the Special Victims Counsel program to cover eligible domestic violence victims and designates Special Victims Counsel paralegals to assist SVCs care for their clients. This mark includes a provision to improve the timeliness of sexual assault investigations by requiring military services to increase their personnel authorizations for criminal investigators to ensure sexual assault investigations are completed within 6 months, and requires the Secretary of Defense to establish non-binding sentencing guidelines based on recommendations from the Military Justice Review Panel. Our commitment to take care of service members and their families includes ensuring quality health care. The mark includes several provisions addressing the quality of care in military treatment facilities, the continued reform of the military health system, and mitigating health hazards such as lead and mold in military housing. The subcommittee mark includes a report on suicide prevention, which requires the department to gather meaningful data to help address this crisis, and also requires the department to formulate a comprehensive mental health care policy to ensure mental health is addressed holistically across the military. I'm pleased that the mark ensures the department continues to focus on the research and treatment of chronic traumatic encephalopathy as part of a traumatic brain injury. Lastly, I want to acknowledge with great enthusiasm the staff's efforts, including Craig Green, Dave Cuccetti, Glenn Deal, Jamie Jackson, Dan Sennett, and Danielle Stites, who always work in a bipartisan manner to develop the mark. The chair will now recognize Mr. Kelly, the ranking member of the subcommittee, for any opening remarks he would like to make.
I thank the chairwoman and my fellow subcommittee members for the hard work that went into this mark. I'm pleased that the subcommittee mark we are considering builds upon many of the important reforms established in previous Congresses. The mark includes vital provisions that support our warfighters, military families, and retirees, and gives them the care and support they need, deserve, and have earned. Specifically, this year's proposal would continue to rebuild and grow the armed forces, including increases in end strength for the Navy, Air Force, and Marine Corps, and extension of special pay and bonuses for service members in high-demand fields. Additionally, it would require the Department of Defense to establish a common comprehensive service record for reserve component service members that will serve as definitive proof of service. The mark will also continue the committee's considerable work over the past several years aimed at improving spouse employment and child care access. The mark would increase the authorized reimbursement for spouse licensure from $500 to $1,000 and would require the department to analyze whether the license reimbursement rates are sufficient. It would also expand eligibility for the spousal tuition assistance through the My Career Advancement Program. The mark addresses the persistent issue of military child care access by requiring the department to conduct a comprehensive review of the adequacy of on-post child care, including the wait lists at all military installations and whether additional financial assistance for child care is required. It would also allow surviving spouses of fallen service members to receive a stipend for child care services. Finally, the proposed mark would continue to build on critical reforms from the last Congress, including refining sexual assault prevention and response programs, providing enhanced oversight of military health system reforms, and improving service member access to behavioral health. As we look forward to next week's full committee markup, there are still several issues to be resolved, including the overall funding levels for the Department of Defense. As Defense Department senior leaders have said repeatedly, a 3 to 5% real growth in the DoD budget is essential to maintain our competitive edge. Therefore, I remain concerned about the overall defense top line and the impact it may have on military personnel and other areas of DoD budget. I want to also recognize the subcommittee professional staff who, without your hard work and your bipartisan work, none of this mark would have been possible. Your extreme professionalism and knowledge of the subject matter is critical to this markup. In conclusion, I want to thank Chairwoman Spear and my colleagues on the subcommittees for their considerable work on this mark, and I yield back.
I thank Ranking Member Kelly. We now will proceed to mark up H.R. 2500, the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2020. Without objection, the first reading of the bill is dispensed with. Copies of our subcommittee mark and directive report language were made available and distributed to member offices on Friday, May 31st. Is there any discussion or question on the subcommittee mark? Yes, Mr. Mitchell.
Just one quick question, if I could. On the safety report policy, do we provide any guidance or definition of minor collateral misconduct is in order to provide guidance to the Department of Defense on that? Can you provide any clarification of that, please?
I think maybe Craig can respond to that. It deals with the issue typically of alcohol.
I believe collateral misconduct is in regulations, but we would have to get back to you on the specific definition that the department uses for that.
Okay, to be clear, I support I just think we need to make sure we understand what that is, or they understand what that is. We don't have some confusion on that. So if you could share that, that'd be helpful.
Right, and the current Air Force policy includes use of alcohol and appropriate relationships. So the policy currently does state what would constitute collateral misconduct.
Thanks. If you get that to my MLA, I'll look at that then. That's
Absolutely.
my only question. Thank you very much.
Yes, Mr. Gatt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Madam Chair, I'm reminded that when former Secretary Mattis cautioned against extensive report requirements, he reflected on the extent to which sending DoD on a number of homework assignments can at times cut against readiness requirements. So my question is this: how many new reports does this mark require?
I don't know the number. Maybe Mr. Green does.
I get you the exact count, but it's a little bit more than a dozen, I think. And we have some direct report language, and as part of some of the bill language, there are.
Is it more than 20?
I'd have to count and get back to you, sir.
And these are new reports that aren't extensions of other direction from other NDAs?
Correct, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other questions or discussion on the mark? There's no further discussion. The chair lays before the members the text of the subcommittee mark for consideration. Without objection, the mark is open to amendment at this point. Are there any amendments to the subcommittee mark? All right. The question now occurs on the adoption of the mark. So many as are in favor will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The mark is adopted. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Cisneros, for the purpose of a motion.
Madam Chairwoman, I move that the subcommittee report the mark favorably to the full committee.
The questions on the motion of the gentleman from California, Mr. Cisneros. So many as are in favor will say aye. 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 Those opposed, no. A quorum being present, the ayes have it, and the motion is adopted. And without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. Without objection, members have 5 legislative days within which to submit written statements into the record. So ordered. I also ask unanimous consent that staff be authorized to make necessary conforming, technical, and clerical changes and to remove from the mark provisions that would cause the mark to refer to other committees or would result in additional direct spending or would result in an earmark. Without objection, so ordered. There being no further legislative business before the subcommittee, this meeting is adjourned, and we did it in 10 minutes. Thank you all for being here. Didn't meet your. No.